Hello, Grandma wants to finish telling you or reading you the story of the Revolutionary War. Remember, what we read so far is the colonists were being taxed by the British, and they didn't like having to pay taxes, especially since they had no say in the laws that the British government was passing. And so they thought that wasn't fair and infringed upon their freedoms. And they wanted to be free. That's one of the reasons why they came to America. Well, it wasn't called America then, of course. And so the Revolutionary War has started. They have declared themselves free from Britain with the Declaration of Independence. And George Washington has become the commander of their Continental Army. And they've had some successes and lots of defeats also. So, continuing the story, the Americans knew that they would need help to defeat the British. They turned to the French, who had fought the British before. American leaders urged them to join the war on their side, but the French needed proof that the Americans could win the war. They didn't want to go on the losing side. In July of 1777, British General John Burgoyne led more than 7,700 soldiers into New York from Canada. So they're coming down from the north. A second British army would move north from New York City. So they're coming up, and they planned to meet at Albany, which is kind of in the middle. By controlling the Hudson River, the colonies would be cut in half. There'd be some of them, of the 13 colonies, to the north of the Hudson River and a bunch to the south. The rough wilderness slowed down Burgoyne. No roads existed, and the British soldiers spent days cutting down trees. There are lots of trees on the East Coast. The army also dragged hundreds of wagons. Burgoyne needed 30 carts to carry his own bags. He must have been a very vain person, I think, to need 30 carts to carry all his stuff. Worse, the American troops commanded by General Horatio Gates and General Benedict Arnold waited for the British in Saratoga. Gates, the American commander, ordered 7,000 of his men to dig earthen forts. If the British wanted to continue south, they would have to defeat the Americans first. Burgoyne ordered his men to attack on September 19th and again on October 7th. Both times, the Americans turned them back with heavy losses. On October 17th, 1777, Burgoyne surrendered his entire army. When they heard of this spectacular victory, the French decided they could safely support the Americans. They declared war on England on July 10th, 1778. So the following year, they declared war on England. Soon, boats filled with supplies and French soldiers were arriving in the colonies. There's a picture of the British General Burgoyne surrendering to the American General Gates. Now, after their victory at Saratoga, during the winter, they had to go to Valley Forge because they had suffered some other defeats. In September of 1777, so it's about the same time that they're having victories at Saratoga, the British Army captured Philadelphia. So the British weren't losing all the wars. The Americans retreated and built a winter camp at Valley Forge. For the next 6 months, the soldiers practiced military exercise in freezing and snowy weather. So here's a picture of the soldiers at Valley Forge. You may have heard stories about what happened at Valley Forge. A lot of soldiers died because they weren't well fed or well clothed. They were hungry, they were cold, but they were determined. They were determined to fight for their liberty and freedom. And so despite many people dying, they came out by the springtime. The army was tougher and better trained. So Valley Forge was quite the trial of fire for the soldiers. It was very hard, but they came out better. With the French now in the war, remember the French joined on the American side in the summertime of 1778. The British looked for a new strategy. General Charles Cornwallis, who was the British general, decided to strike the southern colonies. From 1779 to 1780, Cornwallis marched his soldiers through South and North Carolina. He won victories at Savannah and Camden, but the Continental Army always challenged his advance. In 1781, he ordered his army north to Virginia. So this is several years that they're fighting back and forth. By August, 7,000 British soldiers were camped in the small town of Yorkton, Virginia. Seeing an opportunity, Washington rushed his army south to Virginia. So they had been up north. Suddenly, the British faced an American and French army numbering more than 16,000 men. Cornwallis, however, did not worry. He thought he could always load his men onto ships and escape because they were close to the coast. But when French ships arrived and blocked the route, the British were trapped. For the next 2 months, the American and French soldiers attacked the British lines. There is a picture of General Washington and the French commander Rochambeau watching the British troops from their trenches during the Battle of Yorkton. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis surrendered his entire army. The defeat was a great disaster for the British. When the British soldiers marched out to lay down their guns, a British band played the tune, "The World Turned Upside Down." The British were no longer on top. They had suffered a great defeat. When news of the defeat reached England, a British leader clutched his chest and cried, "Oh God, it is all over." The British knew that their time had come. Now the British wanted peace. On September 3rd, 1783, they signed a treaty in Paris. After 8 years of bloody war, the colonies were a new nation, the United States of America. Here is a picture of some representatives of both the British government and the Americans signing the Treaty of Paris that officially ended the Revolutionary War. And here's a picture of the British General Cornwallis surrendering his army after months of battling the American and French troops. So it was a long and bloody war, 8 years of fighting for the colonists to eventually become free from Britain and have their own country. And that is something that we have to continue to appreciate today, that many people gave their lives so that we could have our freedom. And we need to try our best to deserve it. There are many countries in the world, many people in the world where they are not free. And we have many blessings because we live in a free country, and we can't take that for granted. Remember, Grandma loves you, and I'll tell you some more stories later. Bye.